All right, moving on now, telco service provider Airtel is set to expand their money service offering by increasing the number of their agents across the country. This is despite Kenyans enjoying mobile money interoperability. Now, I spoke to Airtel, Money Managing Director Akinyi Gikonyo, who now says that the industry should be focusing on service delivery and not infrastructure expenditure. I started by asking her what the company's capital expenditure plan is towards its expansion.
From a capital expenditure perspective, what we're doing is to roll out what you're calling Airtel Money branches and Airtel Money kiosks. So if you look at the market, you'll see a lot of these red kiosks written Airtel Money with, dial *334#. And that is what we are really putting out there in the market. So should you go to any of these kiosks, you can then be able to find Airtel Money services. If you go to any of these Airtel Money branches, which are, bigger ones, you can also find our services there. So we've rolled out over 2,000 of those individually for both the kiosks and the Airtel Money branches, and that is across the country. So indeed, a lot of investment has gone in to just make sure that we are bringing services closer. But just note that we are also working with other partners and also what we call multi-brand agents.
One of the biggest concerns for a lot of customers is the question of security. Maybe you can talk us through some of your annual budgets, particularly that you're investing towards the security of the data and the security of these transactions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're very right, Jimmy. If you look at the security aspect, because it's money on your phone, right? So if you look at the security aspect, that is one area that we really, really consider as a key pillar for us as Airtel Money. So we're investing a lot on cybersecurity. I think, we are again looking at areas in which we can make sure that our systems are robust enough. So we look at best practice, what is happening across the world, and just making sure that that is also administered here within Airtel Money. But also, where there are vulnerabilities that have happened in other markets, we then take those as learnings and then make sure that we are employing them to just make sure that our systems are secure.
Where do you perceive to be the area with the greatest risk?
Yeah, so the key thing that we have seen is identity fraud, right? So where your passwords are compromised or your ID is compromised, and there's a lot of awareness that we're doing to just make sure that your password and your PIN is something that is very personal to you, right? And keeping your identity documents safe and secure. So for a lot of this, it's a lot of education that we do. Of course, the regulator is also and helping with that to just make sure that there's a lot of education that is there in the market. But for our customers, we have actually set up also a short code. Should you have some fraudulent transactions going through, you then send, a message to that short code, which we then receive and block.
Tell us, how has the network benefited from mobile money interoperability?
Okay, so if we look at interoperability, we started interoperability actually in 2018, right? 2018, we started on the person-to-person interoperability, where you can then send money across networks through your mobile phone. Now, last year, we then rolled out the merchant interoperability, and merchant interoperability is the tills, yeah? And we then came up with a slogan, till ni till. So whichever mobile phone that you have, you can then pay through that till number that you see there through Airtel Money. And then in July, we then rolled out pay bill interoperability. Yeah, so again, customers can pay to any pay bill that you find out there in the market. And we're seeing fantastic response from customers. On a monthly basis, we're going over 30% month on month. Customers are really adopting that. And if you think about it, Jimmy, a customer should not be concerned about, whose till is this. We should not be competing on infrastructure. We should be competing on service, okay? So if you're making a call, for instance, you don't pause to think, which number am I calling? Is it this network or this other network? You just make a call, all right? And then from a payments perspective, we should then be able, as a country, mature to the place where it doesn't matter, which merchant you're paying. What you want to compete on is on the service that you're providing to the customer. So the infrastructure, right, the pay bills and the tills, these are things that should be available to all customers. And that is going to have the benefit of financial inclusion, it's going to have the benefit of reducing costs, and it really is the way to go. That's the way of the future.
All right, now there has been an increase in terms of the limits of mobile transactions. So what is the net effect of this increase in limits?
Yeah. Okay, very good question, Jimmy. So if we look at, that action itself of increasing the limits from 150,000 to 250,000 per transaction per day, that is a testament that Kenyans are ready and have really embraced mobile money, right? If you remember the journey of mobile money, it was small transactions, small amounts that were being sent through, and Kenyans were not very comfortable holding money in their wallet, right? Now we're at a place where the government is driving the digital agenda. So for instance, on eCitizen, over 5,000 services that are there, right, for Kenyans to pay through. Now, that includes things like land rates and rents. Yeah, and from an Airtel Money perspective, we are already in all those services. You can pay through Airtel Money in over 5,000 government services. Now, the amount that you're going to pay, if it's land rates and rents, then continues to increase, right, depending on where your location is. So we need now to be able to enable payment of those services through the digital platform and through mobile money. And I think it was a very good move by the regulator, supported by the regulator and the government, to then increase these limits, where it will now really, allow many Kenyans for, a lot of services that people pay for. You don't have to start thinking of splitting the transaction, because splitting this transaction is expensive. For each of those, you're then paying a charge. So right now, the increased limits, what we're seeing is, customers can then be able to just make one transaction, and then, if you want to pay multiple people, you don't have to incur very, very high costs. So it's a very good move. And as I say, it's also going to support the government digital agenda.
Take us through the metrics that you use as Airtel to determine the transaction cost.
Okay, so transaction cost is a factor of many things, right? So you have your operational costs. What does it cost us to bring these services to the market, right? You have your infrastructure costs as well. Yeah, you asked me about cybersecurity. Those are costs that we have to bear, right? So when you're looking at pricing, you have to look at what is the cost of doing business, right? And how do those costs, how can you split that cost to then make sure that this transaction that you're then putting out there to the customer is a profitable transaction, okay? So as much as we're saying, yes, we are offering the most affordable services, we are also a profitable company, all right? And what we're trying to do is to keep our costs down, right? And then be able to offer and pass on those benefits onto customers. Okay, so as Airtel Money, what we try to do is really be able to maximize on the benefits that we can give customers by keeping our costs as low as possible.
All right, now let's talk matters inflation. Now, the September inflation increased to 6.8%.